On March 20th, 1995, Japan had one of the deadliest terror attacks in their history, claiming 13 lives, injuring over 5,000 people, all done by a maniac cult who claimed that they were saving and freeing the victims from their own sins. Led by a man claiming to be Christ, the reincarnation of Buddha, and the only one who could save humanity and cleanse us from sin. The cult of Aum Shinrikyo. So how did this all even happen? And what is the cult of Aum Shinrikyo? Shoko Asahara was born on March 2nd, 1955. Born in the city of Yatsushiro. His birth name was actually Chizuo Matsumoto, but he later changed it to the name we know now. So I'll just refer to him as Asahara for the video. At an early age, Asahara developed a rare eye condition called primary congenital glaucoma, which can lead to irreversible damage to a person's eyes. As Asahara became older, he grew an interest in religion and spirituality and studied religion in the early 80s. And as the time passed, Asahara developed a big hatred towards the Japanese government and their traditional religion. Asahara then opened up his own yoga class in Shibuya, which served as a sort of a recruiting ground to start the infamous cult. And after gathering a decent amount of members, it gained official status as a religious organization in 1989 and attracted a considerable number of graduates from Japan's elite universities. That decision was a big step which granted Asahara exponential growth in the community. Shoko Asahara, the leader of Aum Shinrikyo, claimed he was Christ, the reincarnation of Buddha and the only person who could save humanity. He also claimed to be the most conscious and promised his members to also reach a high level of consciousness if they followed his teachings. He blended Buddhist karma, Hindu mysticism, and apocalyptic prophecy. Asahara pushed on that the world will meet a devastating nuclear war between Japan and USA, where only Aum followers would survive to rebuild it. Asahara preached that killing someone with bad karma could actually save them, and people with bad karma were non-believers or not members of the cult. This turned violence into a sacred duty. By the 1990s, his so-called spiritual movement had transformed into a doomsday cult ready for action. And as their member count grew, so did their skeptics, and many ex-members spoke out against the way of the cult and brought to light that their abuse and punishment of members who tried to leave. It was just like any other cult. You can enter, but you can never leave. And because of their status as a recognized religious organization by the government, no police investigation could be launched. In the late 80s, one man stood up to Japan's dangerously growing cult. His name was Tsutsumi Sakamoto, a young lawyer with a fearless streak. He'd taken on Aum Shinrikyo, exposing their abuse and their brainwashing publicly, and he challenged their leader and criticized their ways. But Sakamoto didn't know the cult was watching. On the night of November 3rd, 1989, 3 Aum members broke into his Yokohama apartment. Inside were Sakamoto, his wife, and their 1-year-old son. None of them were seen alive again. The cult had murdered them by lethal injection, deadly sedative potassium chloride, hiding their bodies in remote mountains all over the region of Japan. And the cult seemed to only grow without showing signs of stopping. So Asahara decided to run for parliament. Much to his own surprise, lost, and wasn't even close, only receiving 1,700 of 500,000 votes. And to add salt to injury, not all of his cult members even voted for him. After the failed election, Asahara grew even more violent with his own members. Members who sought to leave were even murdered by the other members who truly believed Asahara's way was the only one to true enlightenment. Asahara had plenty of ways to recruit and entice new members, be it faking that he can levitate or even make an anime about himself to appeal to the youth. In the early 90s, The public could clearly see that Asahara's propaganda campaign brought him even more established members. His rise only grew once he branched out to Russia and got himself around 20,000 new members. Yes, you heard that right. He was so liked in Russia that he even forged connections with the then vice president of Russia. Asahara was no longer some random lunatic with a crazy group of people. This was far more dangerous than any of that. His conquest in Russia gave him plenty of access to weapons and military training he should not have access to. Not long after such foreign success, Asahara's cult began to research chemicals and started mass production of them. It started small, with Aum members running tests in the neighborhood of Kameido. Complaints of neighbors piled in very fast. Odd smell and weird smoke coming out of Aum's apartment. The complaints reached the local police to investigate, but Aum denied entry. What the neighbors didn't know was that the cult was testing chemical agents, including sarin and VX, in a crowded residential area. The fumes were literally poisoning the neighborhood. Complaints got so intense that Aum eventually was forced to pack up and leave. Aum later got a lab in the far nowhere, all the way in Australia, to test their chemical weapons on animals, which seemed to be successful enough. Aum made their big return, Japan, now in the neighborhood of Matsumoto, which ended much more fatal than in Kameido. June 27th, 1994. A quiet summer night in the city of Matsumoto, Japan. Most people were home, windows open to catch the breeze. They didn't know the breeze carried death. In the back of a parked truck, Aum Shinrikyo members were mixing a lethal batch of sarin gas. Their target, a group of judges living in the area who were about to rule against the cult in a land dispute. But when the gas was released, it drifted far beyond the intended victims. Within minutes, people collapsed in their homes. The total casualties, 7 people dead, over 500 injured. Many survivors suffered permanent nerve damage. At first, police suspected a pesticide leak. Aum's name didn't even come up at first. But this was no accident. It was the first large-scale chemical weapons attack by civilians in history. And a grim preview of what would happen in Tokyo less than a year later. And as police started to connect the dots, they finally made a big decision to raid all of Aum's facilities on March 1995. So, how could they have still done the attack on the subway? Well, Asahara was tipped off about the raid, so Asahara decided to act quickly. March 20th, 1995. Tokyo's morning rush hour. Hundreds of thousands of people packed into one of the busiest subway systems in the world. At 7:46 a.m., 5 men boarded different trains, each carrying a newspaper-wrapped package. Inside was death itself. The packages weren't just paper and plastic. They were filled with liquid sarin, a nerve agent created for chemical warfare. The attackers placed the bags on the train floors, then calmly punctured them with sharpened umbrella tips. As the train moved, toxin began to evaporate into the air. Passengers started coughing, their visions blurring. Within minutes, eyes burned, muscles seized, and people collapsed onto the station platform. Station staff, unaware of what they were dealing with. Panic spread. Commuters stumbled out onto the streets, gasping for air, many blinded and convulsing. The siren seeped through the train cars, stations, and even into the connecting subway lines. Tokyo, one of the safest cities in the world, has become a battlefield for survival. By the time the attack is ended, 13 people were dead. Over 6,000 were injured, some permanently. Hospitals were overwhelmed. Emergency crews had to work without proper chemical gear, risking their own lives to save others. It was the deadliest domestic terrorist attack in Japanese history, the first large-scale use of chemical weapons by civilians anywhere in the world. The investigation quickly pointed Aum Shinrikyo, leading to a massive police crackdown, and the world finally saw the full scale of the cult's madness. Asahara stood trial and ended up being sentenced to death. But surprisingly, the cult, after all these years in the big 2025, has still not died out completely. They actually changed their name to Aleph and is very secretive and is strictly supervised by the Japanese police department. Thank you guys so much for watching again. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, share the video. Peace out.